In line for punishment, the government says it will discipline top speed skater Huang Yiting. COVID under control. Restrictions in Taiwan could be eased as early as March. Too cold to lay. Plunging temperatures exacerbate the national egg shortage. And flower power, the remarkable story behind this Taiwanese couple's blossoming edible rose business. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. The government has announced that Taiwan's top speed skating athlete, Huang Yiting, will be disciplined for what it calls her inappropriate words and actions during the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Huang triggered controversy when she posted a video of herself on social media training in a Chinese national team uniform. There are also calls for the country's sports body to set up rules for athletes to follow when representing Taiwan. Louise Watt reports.
Taiwan's top speed skater, Huang Yiting, has become a controversial figure at home. She was fiercely criticised online after posting a video of herself training in a Chinese uniform shortly before the Beijing Winter Olympics, upsetting Taiwanese who view China as a grave threat. Then, during the Olympics, the athlete said she felt like she was competing on home turf. Now Taiwan's government wants to punish her.
国所代表国家有他的责任，应该维护国家的尊严、荣誉。相关的行为极为不当，不符国人的期待。我已经责成教育部体育署做相关的处置跟规范。
But opposition figures say the government is overreacting, including this media personality and member of the opposition Kuomintang or KMT.
到底府院打什么算盘我不知道了哈，但是以苏贞昌大院长、蔡英文的大总统去追杀一个30几岁的小女生运动员啊，我觉得蛮无聊的。
The speed skater hasn't broken any rules that merit disqualification, but the government wants the Sports Administration to establish rules of conduct for athletes representing Taiwan abroad. As for Huang's future, the sports body will order Taiwan's Olympic Committee and Skating Union to discuss her funding, subsidies and competitions within the next 2 weeks, and then decide on her punishment. Punishment that may well have limited effect, as the skater plans to retire from competitive sport, a decision she said she was even more certain about after the anger expressed towards her. Alex Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
An international anti-corruption organization has revealed that James Song, a Taiwan politician who has run for president multiple times, had an account with Credit Suisse that at one point held around $15 million. The account was one of those leaked as a part of a report that accuses the bank of handling funds for clients with proven links to criminal activity. Critics are calling on Song to explain where the money came from. The 79-year-old was once accused by his former party, the Kuomintang, of embezzling millions of US dollars in party funding, although the charges were later dropped. He was also accused of receiving kickbacks from a Navy procurement deal in 1991. Song has denied these accusations, and no evidence of wrongdoing has been found. He has yet to respond to the Credit Suisse revelations. Former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will meet with President Tsai Ing-wen next week as part of his first visit to Taiwan. Pompeo, who served under Donald Trump, will speak at a local think tank and meet Taiwan's Vice President William Lai and Foreign Minister Joseph Wu. While in office, Pompeo advanced U.S.-Taiwan relations by increasing arms sales and lifting previous restrictions on visits by top U.S. officials.
那外交部我们诚挚的欢迎Pompeo前国务卿的伉俪率团来台湾访问。我们知道Pompeo前国务卿他是台湾长期的坚定的友好的朋友，在他任内呢，对于深化台湾跟美国的关系是贡献卓越。
Taiwan reported 44 cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday. The number includes 5 local cases and 39 imported ones. As the spread of infections appears to be under control, the government is planning to ease COVID prevention measures. Sandy Chi has the story.
The number of recent local cases has dropped by 42% compared to the week before. The Central Epidemic Command Center, or CECC, says this shows that the country managed the Lunar New Year travel period well. Seeing the improvement, the government plans to relax pandemic restrictions, possibly starting in March. Quarantine time could be reduced from 14 days to 10.
感染到发病速度越来越快，但是它整体的活跃天数越来越短。你看 Delta 是11天，那 Omicron 就缩为10天，所以说检疫天数也缩短，是一个很正常的一个趋势啦哈。那只是说我们还是要注意说 WHO 它也有宣布啊，后面不是只有 Omicron 哈，后面还有其他的变异株在，我们其实还是不能够掉以轻心。
Meanwhile, the Ministry of Transportation and Communications is considering allowing commuters to eat and drink on trains and other mass transportation, though other disease prevention measures would remain in place.
是不是说高铁还能够，或者说其他大众运输工具，尽量维持类似像是梅花座的一个样子哦？我觉得可能会比较好一点点。当然了，如果说有些像是捷运原本就不准饮食，那它的安全性原本就会比较高。
With the drop of daily confirmed cases, the government aims to achieve a controllable low-risk situation while encouraging the public to remain vigilant. Aznaya Zhou and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
As Hong Kong continues to fight its biggest ever outbreak of COVID-19, an 11-month-old girl has become the city's youngest fatality related to the virus. The girl's death comes just days after a 3-year-old died with the virus last week. Both were in good health before contracting the virus. On the same day, Hong Kong's government approved children 3 and older to take China's Sinovac vaccine, while those 5 and older can take the BioNTech Pfizer shot. The city reported over 7,000 confirmed new cases on Monday, a new high. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced the end to all COVID-19 restrictions in England from April 1st. Starting this Thursday, people who test positive for COVID will no longer be required to self-isolate. Financial support for people who miss work due to infection will also end. The announcement applies to England only. Other parts of the UK have set their own pandemic restrictions. Johnson said the pandemic is not yet over and that new coronavirus variants are certain to emerge. But he said it was time to focus on those for whom COVID poses the greatest threat.
We should be proud that the UK established the biggest testing programme per person of any large country in the world. But its budget in the last financial year was bigger than that of the Home Office, and it cost the testing programme cost £2 billion just last month alone. So we must scale back and prioritise our resources for the most vulnerable.
Emotions are high in Australia as the country once again welcomes foreign visitors. After closing its borders to most arrivals in May of 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, Australia began allowing fully vaccinated tourists to enter on Monday. Over 50 international flights touched down on the first day of the reopening. Australian tourism officials estimate that national carrier Qantas alone will fly in over 14,000 arrivals this week.
Warmth of the welcome that's been given to those first planes that have come in this morning has been quite extraordinary, and to see the way that people have been reunited, the hugs, the tears, has just been wonderful. It's been a party out here at Sydney Airport. Everyone's celebrating. It's so great to have the international tourists back from right around the world.
Well, here in Taiwan, the recent cold blast is set to prolong a national egg shortage. Temperatures have dropped to around 10 degrees Celsius, and as Bing Wang reports, that does not make for a happy hen.
These chickens are not crossing the road. With Taiwan's recent cold spell, they are staying inside their coop, where it's still too cold to lay their eggs. This week, temperatures dropped to around 10 degrees Celsius, exacerbating the egg shortage across Taiwan that began in January. The ideal temperature to lay eggs is 22 degrees Celsius, and in the past week, egg production has fallen 20%. That's why this farmer added extra layers and fans to keep his chickens warm. But officials say this isn't a cause for concern, as temperatures will rise next week. And in the meantime, Taiwan has been importing eggs from Japan, Australia, and the United States.
目前还是要看整体的那个产蛋鸡群的那个恢复生产的状况。如果没有其他特别的一个变数，应该在随着天气渐渐温暖，那产能应该就可以恢复。
Barring any unexpected circumstances, officials say Taiwan's egg supply should return to normal by Easter, around the occasion of a more enjoyable egg hunt. Damon Lin and Bing Wong for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan is now open to imports of food and agricultural products from areas affected by the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan. It comes after the cabinet announced earlier this month that it would lift the decade-long ban. Officials have cited Taiwan's bid to join the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, or CPTPP, Regional Trade Pact, as one of the reasons for lifting the ban. Japan is a founding member of the CPTPP. Taiwan's government says measures including border inspections, certificates of origin and radiation testing will ensure food safety meets international standards. Coming up, Russia's president triggers international condemnation after he recognizes 2 breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine and promises to send in troops. Details after the break.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus. For more great stories from here in Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app.
1947年228事件中，台湾人被迫害、被屠杀，但是台中嘛有一群青年组成武装27部队，勇敢徛出对抗不义的政府。当年27部队部队长张永仁，竟被队长吴金岛、突击队长陈明忠以及食雪红的子弟兵蔡碧芬、陈英贤，70几年后现身说法。请大家来观看武装台中纪录片，见证台湾人这段恐怖的历史。
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. A reminder of our top story. The government has announced that Taiwan's top speed skating athlete, Wang Yiting, will be disciplined for what it calls her inappropriate words and actions during the Winter Olympics in Beijing. Wang triggered controversy when she posted video of herself on social media training in a Chinese national team uniform. National Security Police in Hong Kong have launched a probe into a students' union that was evicted from campus. The Students' Union of the City University of Hong Kong held a farewell ceremony last week before it was forced to relocate. The eviction order came after the union refused to hand over 16 years of audited financial records before a 2-week deadline. At the ceremony, students painted phrases including freedom of thought and academic autonomy in front of their former union store. Others left post-it notes on the now closed Democracy Wall. Police say some of these may have expressed support for Hong Kong independence, which is now considered a criminal offence. The city's national security law, imposed by Beijing in 2020, criminalises calls for secession. Those convicted could face life in prison. The national security probe at the City University of Hong Kong comes amid a wider crackdown on student organisations. Reporter Ryan Ho-Kilpatrick asked Joey Siu, an activist in exile and former member of the City University Student Union, why they have found themselves in the government's crosshairs.
Student unions have always been a very important part of Hong Kong's democratic movement, given its ability to mobilize students and also given that it is a very convenient and also huge platform that provides opportunities to students to engage in politics in Hong Kong, to become activists, to continuously contribute to democratic movements in Hong Kong. So I think because of that, it is very, very important for us to continue to defend and also maintain the existence of student unions and then also other student groups in Hong Kong.
Since the implementation of the national security law, we've seen a very targeted and unrelenting crackdown on the city student unions at University of Hong Kong, Chinese University. The student unions have all been forced to shut down, and student leaders are even facing prosecution. So the pledge by the City Student Union to operate off campus comes as a rare sign of defiance in the face of this crackdown. So why do you think they've taken this bold step, and how do you see this ending?
I think under the escalating pressure from both the school and also the government, there is actually little to no room for student unions to continue to operate as usual anymore. And in the past years, the school, my school, City University of Hong Kong, has actually made multiple attempts to interfere and also try to reduce our influence inside our university campus by all means, from penalizing our executive members for defending the goddess of democracy statue to pressurizing us to take down politically sensitive slogans from our democracy wall, and then also to taking back our offices and also resources. I think the student union was really left with no choice but then to choose to operate off campus. But I believe that the reason why they still decided to continue the operation in such a difficult situation is because that I think we all acknowledge the importance and also significance of maintaining the organization's very existence, especially when so many other civil society organizations, especially student groups, have been forcibly shut down because of the national security law. But then, of course, with the escalating pressure continuously coming from the government and also the school, I believe it is going to be more and more difficult for students to explore a way to continue to serving our students.
And now for a look at some of the other international news making headlines around the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin has ordered troops into rebel-held regions of eastern Ukraine after recognizing breakaway Donetsk and Luhansk as independent states. Putin said the troops would be there on peacekeeping operations, but Western leaders are concerned the move could be the prelude to a full invasion of Ukraine. James Chater reports.
Russian President Vladimir Putin inscribing a new chapter in tensions with Ukraine.
В этой связи считаю необходимым принять уже давно назревшее решение незамедлительно признать независимость и суверенитет Донецкой Народной Республики и Луганской Народной Республики.
The Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics are part of Ukraine's eastern Donbas region. Pro-Russian rebels in the two areas declared independence in 2014. Since then, more than 14,000 people have been killed in fighting between Ukrainian and Russian-backed separatist forces. In an emotive speech on Monday night, Putin claimed Ukraine was a country created by Russia with no tradition of sovereignty. That was before ordering troops into the separatist regions for what he called peacekeeping operations. Shortly after Putin's address, Ukraine's president held a meeting of the country's Security Council. He's ruled out giving up any territory.
За мною Україна у її міжнародно визнаних кордонах. І вони залишаться такими. Попри все, попри будь-які заяви та дії Російської Федерації. Так само, як і ми, залишаємось спокійними і впевненими у собі.
International leaders have expressed concern that Russia's supposed peacekeeping operations could be a pretext for a full invasion. US President Joe Biden has banned trade with the two breakaway regions, with more sanctions to be unveiled. EU leaders called the move a violation of international law and also promised sanctions. and that's echoed by the UN.
The Secretary General considers the decision of the Russian Federation to be a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the United Nations.
In Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, young people watched Putin's address with concern.
What he was talking about, and that's crazy because the diplomatic here is over. And what I'm gonna say, that's crazy because we don't want a war.
But to the east in Donetsk, the territory now recognized by Russia as an independent state, the news was met by some with celebration. But after several weeks of high tensions, the fear is that this moment could be the spark of conflict. James Rayner and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
The International Court of Justice in The Hague began hearings on Monday on whether to hear a case alleging that Myanmar's government committed genocide against the country's Muslim Rohingya minority. Myanmar was represented at the hearing by the military junta that currently rules the country. It is seeking to have the case dismissed on the grounds that it was brought by the Gambia and lacks legal standing. Outside the court building, activists objected to the court's decision to allow the junta to represent Myanmar in court instead of the National Unity Government in exile. The National Unity Government had agreed to answer the genocide charges brought by the Gambia on behalf of the Organization for Islamic Cooperation in 2019. The African nation alleged that Myanmar committed genocide in 2017 when more than 730,000 Rohingya Muslims fled Myanmar into neighboring Bangladesh. At least 59 people have been killed and over 100 injured in an explosion near a gold mining site in the West African nation of Burkina Faso. The blast happened on Monday, leveling nearby buildings and trees. Local authorities initially believe it may have been caused by chemicals stored at the site that are used to treat gold. Burkina Faso is the fastest growing producer of gold in Africa and is the fifth largest exporter on the continent. There are hundreds of small-scale mining operations in the country with only limited regulation, and accidents at such facilities are common. Truth Social, a social media app developed by former US President Donald Trump's media company, launched on Sunday through Apple's App Store. The app got off to a rocky start with technical issues and reports of users shut out of their accounts, but it was ranked as the top free app available on the US App Store as of Monday. Trump is looking to return to social media. He was banned from Facebook, Twitter and YouTube last year for inciting violence during the January 6th attack on the US Capitol, which saw supporters of the president clash with police and storm the legislative chambers. Europe's most active volcano, Mount Etna, has erupted once more, sending a plume of ash over eastern Sicily. There have been no immediate reports of injury, but nearby towns were covered in a layer of ash. The eruption also briefly closed the airport serving the city of Catania. Monday's eruption follows activity at the famous volcano earlier in the month that filled the sky with lava and lightning. A Taiwanese couple's award-winning edible rose business is blossoming after the darkest days of their lives. Philip Brassard brings us their story.
When Zhang Siguang and Guo Enqi started their rose garden 20 years ago, they knew nothing about farming, except that they wanted to do it organically.
你要用哪个点就说服客人说你完全就是安全可以吃。我们那时候就是因为这个点，我们决定说不要用。
They were working towards their goal of having a world-famous garden when Guo was diagnosed with cancer.
因为那时候判定说其实是蛮严重的，我还跟他讲说那一年呢要不要就不要医啦，反正就剩一年就看他干嘛就干嘛这样。
But she didn't give up, and after 5 years of chemotherapy and help from her husband, Guo is going strong.
应该说没有放弃的本钱啦，因为我觉得我如果放弃的话，应该会被念到化疗期间到去年为止，他把我养胖了20公斤，你看多坏这个人。
In 2021, they took part in an international marmalade competition in England, winning 1 gold, 1 silver, and 4 bronze.
怎么样把它就是用到跟玫瑰花互相可以搭配，不抢的话，其实 我当初他只用1个晚上的时间，6罐，然后3款口味寄过去，这样就是6罐都有得奖。
Guo and Zheng's roses are also being used by a renowned Taiwanese baker in his award-winning bread. With this much recognition, at home and abroad, they hope their business will continue to bloom. Patrick Chun and Philip Broussard for TaiwanPlus.
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Finally, today we leave you with some images of the 137th traditional Battle of the Flowers Carnival in Nice, southern France. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the Taiwan Plus app. Stay safe and see you next time.